previous play will go under review.
What is going on, everybody? And thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Under Review. My name is Joe DeRosa. You can find me on Blue Sky at underreviewc1.bsky.social. And it's been a bit of an erratic summer for this show. Obviously, we are not live on Tuesday evening. I have been messing around with a pre-recorded format just to get the content going at a more flexible schedule this summer. So I do apologize if you have been waiting for those Tuesday nights at 7:30. That will return. But in the meantime, we have content going all summer on this channel. And from this show, we are going to be covering what we feel are our top 3 candidates to most likely break out this upcoming season. Now, I want to stress, this is not limited to rookies. This is not limited to second-year players. This is anyone on the team, offense, defense, special teams even, was fair game to choose from as players we feel are going to take a significant step forward, whether it is in personal development as a player, whether it is in production, whether it is in everything. And they just become a major factor more so than they have been in years prior or in a year prior. And I'm really excited to do this episode, and I'm excited to bring on my guest, someone who has visited the show many times, one of my favorite guests to bring on, who can really come through in a pinch, and that is Mr. Mike Bunt. Mike Bunt, welcome back to the show. I had you on a few weeks ago, and I appreciate you returning. How are you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing great. I recently found out my seats in the Bills' new stadium, so I'm psyched about that right now. I'm in a good mood. Actually could afford them, which was always scary going into the process. But happy about football season finally being around the corner. Can't wait to talk about my breakout players. And God, we're almost back. We're almost back to football season. You got to love it.
It's literally like I consider really just after the schedule release, the true doldrums or after really mini camp. Like once you get that summer break, it's just dry. You don't really get much news unless there's an extension or a trade or something that you don't really expect to happen in most cases. So the past few weeks have just been like a tumbleweed rolling through a dry plain. And it's nice that we're getting to that point where training camp is just right around the corner. We're going to have a bunch of news to cover, a bunch of players to follow. And it's why I wanted to do this episode, because now it becomes a little bit more relevant with what we know about the roster construction so far, some of the players they've brought in, some of the expectations we have for returning new, veteran players. I think it would be fun to discuss the ones that we think are going to take a step forward and, again, do more for the team this year that maybe they haven't done in previous years. And that doesn't mean these players were bad. It doesn't mean they were invisible, but there is always room to progress for any player in the league. And these are the people that I think we will, share with each other, the ones that we see likely to do it. So, Mike, I want to get right to the list, and I want to start with you. You are the guest. And for anyone watching, we do not know each other's lists. This was not predetermined. I have 3. He has 3, maybe a couple of honorable mentions. So, Mike, let's start with number 3. Who is your number 3 player that you expect to break out or at least take a significant step forward this upcoming season?
So before I give a name, I just wanted to kind of give my thought process and how I came up with my list. So when you talk about a breakout player, that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Sometimes it could be a player that's never done anything and establishing themselves. For others, it could be a player that has been good, but about to be great. You could have a lot of different criteria. It could be the person that's been in the league for a while that hasn't yet had that mark left. But I'm going to start with number 3 with my dark horse breakout player. Now, this is me maybe stretching a little bit for an extreme dark horse to open this up, because I think my other 5-6 guys that I was thinking about are more likely to have bigger seasons. But Javon Solomon is my
good one.
Breakout candidates. And there's a lot of reasons why. First of all, he was a late round pick last year out of the Sun Belt Conference, who showed a lot of skill in the G5 levels, was a sack machine in college. And while we didn't see him on the field a ton last year, he did have 2 sacks. Was one of 2 players, I think, that were drafted in the 5th round or later to have 2 sacks in an NFL season last year. And what I like about Solomon is that right off the gate, he should have an opportunity to see the field a little bit with Michael Hoyt being suspended the first 6 games of the season. Now, he's going to be in a backup role. He'll be behind guys like Joey Bosa and obviously Greg Rousseau, AJ Epineza. But I still think he's going to factor into the rotation. And given the opportunity, I think he's a player that's going to record some sacks for this Bills team this upcoming season. Not expecting him to be a star, but breakout player. Could definitely see him taking a step forward and becoming a name that more Bills fans are familiar with this season.
I do really love that pick, and I was tempted to put him on the list. The only reason I didn't was because on the inverse of the Hoyt suspension, it feels like there still is a crowded room in front of him, and I don't think that his role is ever really going to be larger than just situational pass rush specialist, but I think he's going to do really well in that role, and I am excited to watch him because he was very explosive last year. I mean, when you saw the opportunities he was getting on the field, whether it was an end of games, whether it was in certain situations where it was a 3rd and long, he generates pressure. He can hit home, and that juice is there. I know people worry about the frame. People worry about, can he hold up in the NFL? But I do think that, the arm length and the violence he plays with and the ability to use his hands, get under your pads, and be strong enough with a low center of gravity to get push bodes really well for Javon Solomon just as a long-term, again, rotational pass rusher. And I think that there isn't that much pressure on him to see it through, but that works in his favor because I think this Bills defense, again, is designed to get you in those positions, to create havoc, to create 3rd and long opportunities. And if Michael Hoyt can't go, and maybe there's a slow development in Landon Jackson, or a very likely sidelining for Joey Bosa if he happens to get hurt, then you have Javon Solomon getting a real opportunity to make noise, maybe in a more expanded role, but even then, still as a true pass rush threat. And I really love that. And I could see it for him. Again, while I have my reasons for why I didn't put him on this list, I am excited about that player. I really love the pick. I loved his combine. I thought the athleticism was there. I thought when you watched his tape from Troy, he was just visible. Like he was not a player that you look at and you're like, I'm not sure. Like, this would have to translate to this. This would have to kind of show more out in the next level. Like right then and there, you could see the potential for what he could be in the NFL. And the Bills have that at the back end of their room. So I love that pick, Mike. That's a great way to start it off. My number 3 is actually, and I didn't just do this because you're on the show, but it's almost like closing the loop on the last conversation we had when you were last here. I do remember this. And I had a really hard time choosing between 2 specific players, but I chose Elijah Moore. And the reason I chose Elijah Moore over Curtis Samuel specifically, those were my back and forth, right? Because Curtis Samuel, the case I was going to make for him was, by the year's end, he became a more consistent part of the offense, and they did run certain things through him. He didn't have crazy volume, crazy numbers, but there were just situations where he came through, whether it was a 3rd and medium or whether it was man coverage beater or whether it was a red zone threat. Curtis Samuel was much more productive when he got healthy. And I do feel like a healthy Curtis Samuel is going to be a huge asset for this Bills receiving room that still has things to prove against man and zone coverage, mainly man. Be a separator, be a true, consistent, stable threat, and be someone that can go down the field. My reason I didn't put him over Moore is durability. I think as Curtis Samuel is getting older, as Curtis Samuel has dealt with nagging soft tissue injuries throughout his career, including last year with turf toe, I just worry if that durability is going to rear its ugly head again. And my expectations for players like Joey Bosa, where, it's consistent that they get hurt, I start to get that with him. So I do worry about long-term productivity being affected for that reason. And even if he plays and he comes through on the field over the course of a long season, I would just need to see it. So for Elijah Moore, why I put him instead? Elijah Moore, to me, has varying expectations from the fan base. Some people think he is wide receiver 1. He is not. Let's stop doing that. I don't think he's wide receiver 1. But some people think he's also a fringe wide receiver 5. I think Elijah Moore's production, realistically, is going to be something that sits in the 500 to 600 yard range, something like a 4 to 6 touchdown being his high point, maybe 50 to 60 receptions, because when he was Cleveland, he had 61 receptions, 538 yards, 1 touchdown. But the offense did use him a bit more in a less crowded wide receiver room. But I do think that Elijah Moore does bring really stable, solid route running to a Bills room that, again, needs to create separation. And he is a separator on all levels of the field. I think that skill set is going to be very vital for when the Bills find themselves in a disadvantageous position on offense where maybe the run isn't working as well as they wanted to. They met a really good front seven that's channeling them and matching them really well, shutting them down. They can't really get flexible and they need to throw the ball more. I think Elijah Moore is going to grow into a role where he becomes Josh's other right-hand man on third down as opposed to Khalil Shakir. And this isn't to discredit Josh Palmer, but I think Josh Palmer is going to almost be like a 2019 John Brown for the Bills in the sense that he will be like an X role and command a lot of attention because he's going to go upfield frequently. I think Elijah Moore is going to eat off the plate of that role, though, and become someone that becomes kind of your crutch in clutch situations. And I'm very excited to watch it. And again, the ability to work out of the slot, the ability to work upfield, I think are very imperative things for this receiving core. And I think that Elijah Moore, for that reason, is going to have a very nice rapport with Josh Allen, create separation, get open. And Josh isn't going to be afraid to target him. A great point made by Matt Harmon on this week's Cover One Buffalo podcast is that Josh Allen would be willing to throw to someone with this frame, a frame that he feels held him back at certain points in his career. I think Elijah Moore is going to be a much more productive and stable part of this receiving core. And he's a candidate for me to possibly break out. And again, breaking out is relative. I don't think it's 1,200 yards, like I said, about 500 to 650, but a really productive, helpful 500 yards that overall boosts the threat of this receiving core and makes the offense more potent. Mike, what do you think?
Hey, I like what you had to say. Elijah Moore definitely has some ability. He probably has the biggest range of outcomes for this upcoming season. You say 500 yards. I think a lot of fans would be disappointed at 500 yards out of Elijah Moore. But the fact of it is, he's never really had 600, 700 plus type yard seasons. So his ceiling has been around 60 receptions for around high 500. So if he can have 600 to 700 yards, that would be a good season for him. Definitely a player that some people think has that 800, 900 yard potential. Me personally, I have to see it before I believe it. I believe he's going to have an impact on this Bills offense. He could be a 40-plus catch guy. The 1 year, $5 million contract, though, it gives me some hesitancy. If the Bills really valued him, if the rest of the NFL really valued him, he wouldn't have been around all the way up until the draft. So while I do see the potential for him breaking out, I don't think it's a guarantee. But I think we all believe in the skill set that he brings to the table. He's obviously very quick, very elusive, can get downfield, can do things with the ball in his hands. I do see a higher ceiling for him. It's just, will the Bills bring that out of him? I know there's been talk about, well, he's played with a lot of bad quarterbacks. Well, if you're on a lot of bad offenses and you have the skill set, why are they letting you go? So that's one of my questions with Elijah Moore, with the Jets in Cleveland being able to move on from him. And then number two, the team's not going after him. And then number three, we've kind of done this before with the Bills where we've hyped up these marginal receivers in the past and said, well, with Josh Allen, they're going to go off. We did it this past season with Curtis Samuel and didn't really do anything. We've done it with Trent Sherfield the year before that. So there's been a handful of guys, even Kelvin Benjamin early in his career was someone that people thought was going to make an impact in Buffalo. I know different situation, but it's not always working out. Even Amari Cooper, even if you believe he's washed, Amari Cooper really didn't do anything once he came to Buffalo, despite being an impact player the year before. I'm glad that you brought up Josh Palmer, though, and then you brought up 2019 John Brown, because 2019 John Brown was a pretty good receiver that helped make Josh Allen the guy that we now know. 72 catches for over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. So I would love to see some 2019 John Brown out of Josh Palmer. And I don't know if this was your last show that I was with you that I discussed this with. Has there ever been a Bills free agent receiver that's gotten the contract that John Brown has gotten that has been more under the radar than Josh Palmer? All of this talk about Elijah Moore, all of this talk about Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid and James Cook. Nobody's talking about Josh Palmer at all.
Yeah.
The dude is getting over $10 million a year, and there's a reason why, and it's because the Bills are going to prioritize him in their passing game. And I can't wait to see him put up some numbers with this Bills team, because I know he hasn't been a stat machine or a box score stuffer in LA, but there's a couple things when you look at the numbers that show a guy that has the potential to do a lot more than what we've seen prior in his career. So here's the first couple things. Second year in the league, goes off for 72 receptions. That's pretty impressive when you talk about a second-year player right out of the gate. But the last couple of years, there's things that go into his decreased numbers. So if you actually go through the last 3 years, Palmer only played 10 games in 2023. And if you count the last 3 years combined, he's played in 41 games. If you do his per 17 game averages over the last 3 years, Joshua Palmer averages 62 receptions for 801 yards a season. Mm-hmm. Those aren't small numbers.
No.
Everybody's pumping up Elijah Moore because they see the 60 receptions around there the last 2 years in Cleveland. But we're talking about Josh Palmer, a guy that actually averages around the same numbers per 17 games, but a higher receiving yards total, and a guy that the Bills want to use in their vertical game, and they have already given a lot of money to him. And when you ask Brandon Beane, he'll tell you part of the reason he didn't put up all the numbers last year, Herbert missed him a few times. There was plays out there to be had that the Chargers didn't utilize him. Also, LA went from a very pass-heavy offense in Palmer's first 3 years to a very run-oriented attack last year.
Mm-hmm.
You look throughout the offense, numbers went down for everyone with Harbaugh, and obviously they bring in Ladd McConkey, who had a great season. And maybe that's part of the reason why Bills fans aren't as high on Palmer, because they see McConkey go off, and they're like, well, Palmer had an opportunity, he didn't take advantage of it. But I'll say this. When the Bills had Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis was putting up numbers. He had a season with 830. He was averaging over 700 yards per season. I think Joshua Palmer is a lot more talented than Gabe Davis. I believe he's a higher upside player overall. So if you put him in a similar role to Gabe Davis, and you have a better offensive line, you have the ability to run the ball, and you have a few other weapons in your pass game like Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Elijah Moore, I think that opens things up for Josh Palmer. I'm not going to say he's going to be a 1,000-yard receiver, but my expectations going in is that Palmer is going to be between a 50 to 55 reception guy. That's going to be anywhere from 750 to 850 yards. And I know that those aren't spectacular numbers. Those are wide receiver 2 numbers or wide receiver number 3 numbers if you ask Bills fans during the Gabe Davis years. But those are going to be very helpful for the Bills going forward. And I think there is a ceiling for even a little bit more if he gets that rapport right away with Josh Allen.
Yeah, and I really like the addition of Josh Palmer, and I don't disagree with anything you've said. I am bullish on his role in this offense, and I think that production profile that you listed is realistic. But also, 800 yards in the Bills' offense, it needs some sort of scaling, because the way they function as an offense, like, it is pretty hard to get 1,000 yards when the ball goes to so many targets, and you also prioritize running the ball efficiently and throwing to your tight ends and throwing to your backs. Like, any real threat downfield would be putting up 800 yards based off sheer explosive volume, and that would be celebrated and be a really big accomplishment. So if Josh Palmer can do that, I'm totally good for it. And I think, what you described with him and the Ladd McConkey dynamic is why I haven't bought into the idea that he is going to probably have the same, output that John Brown had in that year. But then again, John Brown had been a part of some crowded offenses and ate once he worked with Josh Allen and got into that true X role. So I am excited to watch him. I think he is going to be a plus for this Bills offense. And I think just kind of tying the two together, because they kind of share, and you're going to hear squeaking noises in the background. That's the dog chewing on the toy. But the connection with these two receivers, I think the Bills had a clear goal in who they wanted to add personnel-wise. I think they didn't feel that anyone in the draft was worth reaching for that could provide you the same skill set with the free agents they brought in. And I think that both of these players offer you upfield separation ability, which greatly matters, and I'm excited to watch it. And I think, honestly, why I say Moore and you say Palmer, either or could be that breakout candidate based off usage. But I think if you wanted to make the case that it's more likely to be Palmer, I think that's perfectly fair. But again, I just need to see Palmer maintain an X role and thrive in it for me to buy into him breaking out more than the production profile he had in LA last year. Whereas with Moore, I feel like expectations are low. The role might start out as limited, but it's going to grow eventually just because of, again, that reliability that you can get with him on third down if you put him in the slot. And also a point that I wanted to make a little bit earlier that I forgot to, I think he is your safety blanket if Keon Coleman's development doesn't really pan out the way you want it to, at least this season, and if Curtis Samuel goes down. Because you have Khalil Shakir, you have Josh Palmer, but again, you need that other guy to be able to get open and work for you on 11 personnel if you decide to run it. And I think that Elijah Moore can be that for you and be someone that really feeds into that wide receiver 3 role. Even if he isn't a major scoring threat, I still think he could be productive. But in the case of Josh Palmer, bouncing it back, yeah, I like the addition. I was very for the signing. I thought the contract seemed a little rich, but it's actually pretty reasonable. And I think that they're going to ask him to do a lot. And if he does take that step forward, that is going to make this Bills offense all the more potent and all the more explosive. And I don't think it's unrealistic to say something like 700, 800 yards for Josh Palmer could happen. I mean, he had some very big plays for LA in the years. And I think a lot of his production got shrouded from, again, being in an offense that had Mike Williams, who was their primary boundary threat, and Keenan Allen, who worked out of the slot, but was basically the best slot receiver in his prime. He was an ancillary piece, but a really good one. Maybe a growth and role is what he needs to break out. And I could totally see it. And I want to ask, Mike, was he your formal number 2? He was actually your number 2 on the list, or did we just get in a receiver tangent?
So he was originally going to be my number 1, but then once you brought him up, I figured it was a perfect segue to get into.
All right.
I have a list of 10 players right now. And so I put them in different categories of what makes sense to talk about, what's going kind of like out there versus what's safe versus what makes good conversation. So once we do the number 1 afterwards, I'll kind of go into some of my other thought processes.
Yeah.
But Palmer was probably the one guarantee going into this that I was going to talk about. And it's funny how you mentioned how Elijah Moore has lower expectations going in while Palmer has those elevated expectations, because you're right. From the Bills' standpoint, from a purely football standpoint, Moore has more ground to gain. So he has to prove himself more within the organization to get to that point where he gets the playing time and the opportunities. It's ironic, though, because a lot of times fans don't have that same process of thinking. Not saying that's good or bad. My feeling among interactions with Bills fans is that more of them are high on Moore, no pun intended, than Josh Palmer. I actually get a little bit of this. Palmer's like Gabe Davis. He's going to be our number 2, but he's not going to do much. And
definitely not.
I feel like I'm a little bit higher on Josh Palmer than most people I've been speaking with. And I don't know if that's maybe just the group that I interact with, or if I'm not really sure the reasoning, but I feel like he has that 800-yard potential. And you made a good point, too. In an offense where you plan on spreading the ball out and you plan on getting Shakir, Palmer, Coleman, maybe Samuel and Moore involved, and then you still have your tight ends and your running backs. Really, what is considered a good year? What is a bad year? Because when it was just Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis is your number 2, and you really don't have that third high-level contributor, it felt like a disappointment when Gabe Davis was only putting up around 800 yards because everybody believed there was a much higher ceiling there. But for a Josh Palmer, for a Keon Coleman, 700, 800 yards, if they can both get around numbers like that, or Elijah Moore getting to 600, those would be good seasons, even if statistically, when you compare him to other number 2 receivers in the league or 3 receivers in the league, you might be like, oh, they're not that good. But in Buffalo, it might be the perfect complementary roles that fit this offense and let it gel the way you need it to.
Yeah, no, I mean, last year, the Bills' top 3 in receptions were 3 different positions. It was receiver, tight end, and running back. Like, it is perfectly fair to say that an 800-yard receiver, if you weight it to league, or not weighted to league average, if you put it on a scale like a Bills curve, it would basically be like having a 1,200-yard receiver, because they're not going to get the same amount of receptions as more pass-heavy offenses. It's just not how it functions anymore. So for Palmer to be able to potentially do that would be very welcomed by me. I hope it happens. I am pretty bullish on this receiving core. A lot of people seem to be like looking at it on paper and thinking that it's not going to produce the way it could. I personally believe it will. And my reasoning is it feels like they have one of every type of skill set. But even if you want to say it's all slots, it's not a bad thing. Slots can sustain a drive. Slots can be shifty. They're route runners. They can get upfield if you need them to. And they have guys that profile really well. Again, as man separators, they have guys that are speedy, guys that could be used in gadget roles, guys that could be motion pieces, misdirection pieces. I think the Bills have set themselves up to have a really fluid receiving core that's going to benefit them and complement that ground and pound style that they've developed really well. And I think that when you view this offense, you have to view it in tandem with what they've built scheme wise, and not just, well, these are the receivers that they have. Because again, you can look back at the great Patriots teams. You can look back at some of even the most recent Chiefs teams post Tyreek Hill and say, well, they're still winning and they don't really have that prolific guy outside of maybe one person. In the case of the Chiefs is Travis Kelce, who is incredible. That is an offense that was built with role players in mind and guys that are good at doing their 111th, and then they get open or they make a reception based off their skill set and it works. And I think for the Bills, that's what they're going for. So I'm just hoping that that's the case. I'm hoping that that is what we see from them this year. I'm excited. Mike, I'm going to move on to number 2. And I know I'm frozen on the screen right now, but I think you can still hear me giving your reaction. I don't know what's going on.
I can still hear you, man.
The good news is it's not just a YouTube show. It is an audio show. So the audio listeners are not going to know what the hell is going on. On YouTube, you see a still of my face. So just run with that and pretend you see me talking until the connection improves. But let's go to number 2. And my number 2 is Cole Bishop. And I chose Cole Bishop simply because all the cases I've made for him as a player, this year, this upcoming season, I think are all going to be pieces that lead to him breaking out as a starting safety in the NFL, but also in this defense. Last year, again, and I've made this point so many times on the show, but it's been a few weeks, so I could say it again. I think that the Bills really wanted him to slot in as a starter right away. Injuries delayed it, and here you go. You have a rookie that needs to catch up on the playbook, and he's not going to be as sound immediately. He's going to have growing pains. He's going to look out of place because he really didn't get those reps. This year, I need to see him stay healthy, but if he does, and he can get through a full training camp, if he can get through a full offseason program and ramp himself up properly, then I think what you're going to get is a Cole Bishop that his football IQ, his processing, his understanding of the defense, his understanding of how they disguise coverages, how they move their safeties around, how he's going to work in tandem with his boundary corner, his nickel corner. I think that what you're going to get is a refined version of the rookie you saw last year, and one that when he is playing, whether it's free safety or strong safety, at the very least, we're going to get above average to good play from him. Because again, I don't expect him to be elite. It takes safeties a long time to develop, but I do think good safety play for Cole Bishop is a great step forward for him, but also a great step forward for a passing defense that can really benefit from some stability in their secondary, especially with all the revisions that they have made to that group in the cornerback room, where they've drafted 2 corners, brought back Trey White, and are really trying to reinvent it. I think Cole Bishop is a huge piece of that puzzle, and a healthy Cole Bishop that gets training camp reps, that gets the ability to just stay on the field and get reps, I think by default from that growth, from that ability to ramp up, is going to grow as an athlete who is already a freak enough athlete, someone who is already really fast, really fluid, can translate well onto the field. He can shift in coverage really well. He can tackle really well. These are all things that I think Cole Bishop brings to the table. If that mental processing takes that step forward, I totally expect him to break out as a huge member of the safety room and ultimately someone that just, again, fortifies you on those third and longs and just prevents any lapses in coverages and can make up for lost ground if he does get dusted a little bit. Like, he's someone that I have that much faith in to fortify that part of his game. It's why he's my number 2 on the list. Mike, I'll pitch it back to you. What do you think of Cole Bishop?
So Cole Bishop was one of the guys that I was considering putting on my list. There was only a few reasons why I didn't include him, and it's mostly because he didn't really step up given his opportunities last year. He left more to be desired overall on the playing field. Now, when you look at Sean McDermott's history with safeties, it's normally a safe bet that somebody like Cole Bishop will step up. You look at Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, almost anybody that's been back there, Taylor Rapp recently, even DeMar Hamlin's had his moments. Normally, whoever they have back there is going to have success. So I think you'd be a fool to bet against Cole Bishop, especially since he was a day 2 pick in recent years. I just need to see more from him. I need to see him healthy. I need to see him through a camp. And then at that point, hopefully we can see Cole Bishop take that next step forward with the Buffalo Bills. But that's as good of a pick as any, Joe. I don't know if you're with me right now.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. So that's good.
I've turned into Bruce Nolan live on air in the sense that you can't see me, you can only hear me.
John Cena, you can't see me, man. But
yeah, but I don't know what happened.
Like Cole Bishop, I don't know. Pick. I don't know what you heard me say or not. My only skepticism is I haven't seen it yet, and that's what I struggle with. Everything points to him being a good prospect, him fitting in with McDermott and Bobby Babbitt. They know what they're looking for in the secondary, especially at the safety position. But I need to see a little bit more before I can just proclaim it's going to be a great fit. And I'll probably be made a hypocrite with my next pick after making that statement there. But I think it's going to work out well, but I need a little bit more of a sample size.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And I think why I just chose him was because even if there isn't that much of a body of work from him, I think what development could happen for Cole Bishop as far as positive development goes, I think that alone is already going to make him like a huge part of this defense. It has to be, right? Because he's playing safety. But I think it's already going to lock him into just a role that elevates the rest of the defense. Like, the impact of his development is breaking out. It is creating stability, and it is creating splash plays and turnover opportunity and hard hitting. And honestly, complementing with Taylor Rapp, who I did consider putting on this list, another really aggressive, hard-nosed safety that just makes the physicality of this defense more imposing and something that you could see happen this season. So I think it's just what it looks like if he could break out and if I think it's realistic. And I think it is for Cole Bishop. But I definitely understand people's like hesitation or skepticism because I have my concerns. What if he gets hurt again? What is it going to look like? I mean, does Derek Forrest come in and all of a sudden you have a question about your second round pick? Or is it DeMar Hamlin again? Like, we would have to see. But I'm just very optimistic about the prospect. I liked him last year so much, especially after the combine, seeing his athleticism on display. I think he was a perfect pick for a Bills defense that needed a safety. I think he's their future, and I think the future is now, and he develops to break out this upcoming season. But Mike, let's move on to number 1. Actually, before we get to number 1, I do want to hear just a couple of those honorable mentions you had. You can give me a quick read on why you chose them, why you didn't put them in the top 3. You had a list of 10. So I am very interested to hear who didn't make the cut.
And I'll give you a few of the honorable mentions because I don't want to take away the entire surprise because there's a few guys that could still be that number 1. My honorable mentions, I had Osiris Torrance. I know that he's been a starting right guard for a couple years. Hasn't been a highly graded lineman despite being on a highly rated overall offensive line. I think there's some untapped potential for Osiris Torrance to take his game to another level. This one I didn't say because I thought fans would grill me if I said it, but Dalton Kincaid, through 2 years, he really hasn't had that high level of play that Bills fans were hoping for, but it's not like he's been bad either. He's averaged around 59 receptions for about 560 yards. So for most players in their first 2 years in the NFL as a tight end, that would be pretty damn good. But when you're a first-round pick with expectations from a fan base of being the next Travis Kelce, that's a little bit disappointed. I think Kincaid has another level that he can get to. And then I'll say a few other of my honorable mention players. Ray Davis, he'll have an elevated role. Alec Anderson, he really stepped up well last year given his opportunities. And then Dorian Williams. Is that door going to open for him to eventually be one of the starting linebackers, assuming that this is Matt Milano's maybe his last year on the Bills? So those are a couple of my honorable mention. I'm not going to say a couple because I want to leave some surprise. So my number one breakout player right now, I already went receiver train. Could I be mentioning Keon Coleman? Could I be mentioning Taylor Rapp, some other guys on this team? My number one guy, I'm going to kind of be a little bit wimpy with this one. I'm going with the rookie first-round pick, Maxwell Hairston.
Wow. Okay.
And I know some people will say that's unfair. You're picking a first-round pick who is being picked to be part of the future. I really like the talent on this guy and what he brings to the table. The Bills have not had speed in the secondary like this guy the entire time McDermott has been in Buffalo. This guy is he's unbelievably fast. And does he have a learning curve? Yes, he's gonna need to get down with the NFL game. You have Trey White as a mentor who can help you learn things with the defense. And if you're not ready, Trey White can start for a little bit until Hairston is ready. And if Hairston is ready, I think there's some high level potential right there. You have Benford on the one side and Hairston on the other. Say this defensive line lives up to the expectations and the hopes of Bills fans, getting to the quarterback, creating pressure. Hairston, a ball hawking machine that has speed to do something with it after he has it in his hands. The future is unlimited with this guy, assuming that everything is good off the field, that there's no problems with the recent civil case. I love this guy. I think he has the ability to be a future star in the making in the NFL level, and can't really wait to see what he does on the field. The one person I didn't mention earlier, an honorable mention, now I'll give him away, was Keon Coleman.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I don't think Keon Coleman can't break out. I think a lot of fans are going to pick a guy like that because he's likable, he's charismatic. He was their first pick in the second round last year. My issue with Keon Coleman is, at this point in time, I don't think he has what is needed from a skill perspective to dominate on his own. He is great with the ball in his hands, and he can make people miss. He can make a 5-yard slant into something special. He can take almost anything to the house. He can get a jump ball in the end zone, but I don't like the fact that as a route runner, he struggles to get separation, and that it forces a lot of tight window throws. So while I do expect Keon Coleman to put up decent numbers, he's not going to ever be my breakout, because I feel like when you're that first pick of the second round, there's always going to be those expectations that he could be 1,000+ yard receiver. And I really don't think that's going to be his role with the Bills going forward. Now, I could be wrong, but when you do the expectations game, just like with Josh Palmer, if Bills fans are thinking 600 yards and he gets 800, that's a success. Or Elijah Moore getting to 600, 700, that's a success. I think the same is going to hurt Coleman, where he gets 600 to 700 yards. People are going to consider that a failure. So for the sake of this conversation, I'm not going to have him as my breakout player. But Maxwell Hairston, I know you could kind of say the same first-round pick. There's going to be sky-high expectations. I think this guy has that skill set to be an unbelievable corner one day in the NFL. And I even think as a rookie, he has the ability to be good right away. And who knows, I could be completely wrong with this, Joe. We would be seeing Kyer Elam struggle. But
yeah,
if for the cornerbacks that understand what they're supposed to be doing in the Bills defense, typically have success pretty quickly. And I think that Maxwell Hairston has all the tools to where if he has it upstairs, he's going to be able to capitalize.
And I'll validate you on the reason for picking him. I just think that he's a better fit for this Bills defense than Elam was coming out of college. I think he is a savvy zone corner. He has great ball skills, but he also has great awareness when it's on the field, real-time processing, ability to time and jump on routes, ability to cover in man even. He didn't play a lot of it, but I do think that the profile he has as an athlete, playing with a lot of speed, does lend itself well to someone like Max Hairston in his own defense, where they're going to be playing from depth and coming up to make a play. The tackling is really the only thing I'm worried about with him, but I think that can develop in time. As long as the coverage skills are good, I'm good. And I think there is real potential for him with a good training camp to emerge as that immediate CB2 and to be ready to go on week 1 and be a really stout rookie corner. I don't think it's unrealistic to expect big things from him. He is your first round. He's your first round pick. And I think that he has a lot of his game that translates well with this Bills defense to a point where, like, I can understand why someone's expectations for him are quite high, and they've needed stability at the CB2 position for years. And I think they finally got that complementary corner to the opposite side that can be a net positive and really just shore up the ability to cover deep and make teams have to be one-dimensional, throw to the middle of the field, which is really where they want you to throw. So I like that pick. It's not on my list. He's not on my list again, just because I figured rookie. Like I don't know if he'll break out. I'm very cautious with Bills corners. I know they develop DBs well. I've said it on the show. I'm a big fan of McDermott's ability to develop secondary players. But with Hairston, I feel like there are going to be just natural growing pains for Hairston. I think it's just going to come with their desire to play more man coverage and maybe showing some lumps in that. Not that he can't, but maybe that it's going to present it like, oh, well, I'm not playing what I played so frequently at Kentucky, to a point where maybe it's going to throw me off my game a little bit and I have to adjust and course correct. And that's okay. I mean, I expect it from a rookie. I give him some grace. So I don't have him on my list, but I definitely understand your points. And I think fans should be excited for the pick because fundamentally it made sense. For my honorable mentions on here, I mentioned Curtis Samuel earlier. He was my one I left off the list. Dalton Kincaid is another one. And for the same reasons you mentioned, like, I think that Dalton Kincaid's problems are not only his own. I think there are external factors that led to a decline in production this year. And a lot of that has to do with Josh Allen and his inability to be accurate downfield, which really did hurt Dalton Kincaid in that regard. There were numerous opportunities, as you mentioned before, with Herbert and Josh Palmer, with Josh Allen and Dalton Kincaid being open and creating separation, but not getting an accurate ball and not getting that big explosive play. And I mean this, Mike. I think that with Kincaid, it like the entire conversation. I mean, obviously the drop in the AFC Championship is almost like a perfect culmination of the discourse of him, because it was a really difficult play, but he was there and he drops it. And it's like, damn, that connection just can't happen. Like they aren't getting on the same page. Everything feels panicked and rushed with Dalton Kincaid, and it leads to mistakes or missed opportunities. And during the year, if just like 2 or 3 of those deep shots connected, I think people have a completely different perception of Dalton Kincaid in this offense, but it never came to fruition because just bad balls were thrown or he wasn't looked at. Like, I can think of the Texans game where he had a step on Al-Shaair and it got tipped at the last second and it would have been a touchdown. I can think of the Colts game where he was wide open, like, and he had a golden opportunity. I can think of the Miami game where he was open on that third down and just Josh missed him because he didn't reset his platform properly. I think you can make a great case for Dalton Kincaid being a tremendous breakout star this upcoming year, even with my own worries that I've mentioned on this show. I just didn't put him on the list because I could make a stronger case, at least for me, for other players on this list. And then the other one I had was O'Cyrus Torrence. Also, because yeah, he is a starter, but there is work to be done in his pass protection. I think as a run blocker, he really has developed nicely. In pass pro, he's had some really solid games, but I'd like to see him stretch it more consistently and not get destroyed by someone's like low center bull rush or get knocked off his feet by really strong, aggressive interior, or even get fooled on games and stunts where he doesn't really take the pass off properly and he loses balance and gets blown by. I just want to see him refine that a bit. If he does, I think he's a guard you keep on your team forever. But that is something that I'm just like, I'm a little weary to put him on the list of expecting it to get better. He said it himself that it's something that like he works on and like practices for. And I think you could put him on a list if you made one. I just kept him off because I was just unsure versus the other people I had on here. And now I'm going to give you my number one. This might be a cop-out, Mike, because I feel like this is a person you could have put at number one on this list for like the past 3 years. But I think given the way, my reasoning, given the way the Buffalo Bills have retooled this positional group, given the way the Buffalo Bills have invested in this positional group, given the production the individual player has had on his own, but also seeing what the flashes look like for this player when a complementary piece is on the opposite side of him, my number one player is Greg Rousseau. And I chose Greg Rousseau because I want to just read you this stat, which was he was 30th in pass rush productivity in 2024 amongst, I believe I had it at 50% of qualifying edge rushers. Now, 30th, you might be thinking, it's not that great, but go ahead and go look at the list of defensive ends he's above, one of which being Max Crosby, one of which being Josh Sweat, one of which being Odafe Owe. Like, names that you recognize as edge rushers that in the back of your mind, if you don't watch the rest of the league and you just hear their names said, you would imagine them being very productive, touted edge rushers that if they were a free agent tomorrow, you would be like, oh, dude, we got to get him. It's going to make our line so much better. Greg Rousseau has, in my opinion, all the secondary pieces of being an edge rusher set, including his run defense, which is elite. He is one of the best edge setting run defenders in the league. Okay. But he does generate pressure. He does make push in the pocket. He can win. But, obviously with the way this Bills defense is constructed, a lot of 4-man pressures, and oftentimes with the space created, quarterbacks get opportunities to extend plays. It doesn't really see his closing as often. And that is something that I think he does need to improve on. However, the best versions of Greg Rousseau, in my opinion, have been when he has that opposite piece. When Von Miller was healthy, that was the best, and I'm talking Von Miller 2022. In my opinion, that was the best Greg Rousseau looked in his entire career before he hurt his foot. And then he missed time. He comes back. He's not 100%. Leonard Floyd comes in and he looks really, really good. And then he suffers another injury and he's just not able to stay on the field. But when he is healthy and he has that opposite piece, I think Greg Rousseau is a phenomenal edge rusher in pass rush, especially. And the PRP metrics from this year and last season back it up that he is a pressure generating threat. So now, I know I mentioned my injury concerns earlier, by the way, and Greg Rousseau has had them in the past, but last season he was healthy. So I don't really worry too much about injury with Greg Rousseau. But what I will say is, now that this Bills defensive line has not only added Joey Bosa, but also gotten Landon Jackson to be that rotational piece who I have a lot of confidence in. I'm very excited about that player, but also retooled the interior to include TJ Sanders, who is a very pass rush threatening 3 technique, at least, or 1 technique, however he's going to play, maybe even at nose. Another pressure savvy draft pick in Deion Walker, but also going and getting Larry Ogunjobi, who is very good at generating pressure from the interior, getting Michael Hoyt. The addition of Ryan Nielsen, which I think is going to be the biggest factor in this D-line potentially transforming to be more productive. I think all of those things I listed lend themselves to Greg Rousseau's ability to develop more as a pass rusher. And what I think you are going to see, Mike, is Greg Rousseau's best season yet. Best season in pass rush productivity, best season in overall sack numbers, even though the Bills are a very collective when it comes to the sack numbers. Like, it's not one guy, it's a few guys that all generate different amounts. Like Ed, Sanders, Bosa, I think they're all going to have their share. But I think Rousseau is just going to have his most productive, most acceptable, biggest breakout year of his career for all those factors I listed. And I am incredibly excited to watch him. I am incredibly excited that we extended him for such a reasonable contract. And I think, like Ed Oliver a couple years ago, Mike, he's going to play above the value. And we're going to be really happy we got him for as cheaply as we did. And that's my number one and the last player I got. So, Mike, back to you, and then we'll wrap it up. What do you think of Greg Rousseau?
I love it. It's a great pick. Greg Rousseau is a tough player, though, to talk about, especially with fans, because we've been taught that sacks are the most important stat when it comes to judging defensive ends. And that is just not something that Greg Rousseau lights up on a yearly basis. Now, you mentioned all the other advanced metrics and things that he does great in. He has a good pass rush win rate. He is great in the run game and contain and keeping quarterbacks in the pocket. And there's so many things that Greg Rousseau is good at, absolutely deserving of his contract. And you look at his potential going forward as a young defensive end, he has the ability to become one of the best defensive ends in Bills history. Now, I'm not going to call him Bruce Smith or anything like that. That's a whole nother level, way above Greg Rousseau. But I think you're looking at a guy that has already been in the league, what, 4 years, 5 years? Apologize for not getting the number 100%, but you're talking about a guy that has a chance to play a decade plus in Buffalo and really make a high level impact. And I hope fans realize that what he does goes beyond just sacking the quarterback. And a lot of this was known when he first came to Buffalo, was that even though he had the sack totals at Miami, he was never really that explosive, off the edge, get to the quarterback in a second and a half type guy. He was more of a clean up the pocket. Somebody gets the quarterback to push up, then he'll take him down. And I do think that with the way the defensive line is currently orchestrated, with Joey Bosa on the opposite side and Ed Oliver in the middle, and bringing in some of this much needed help throughout the rest of the line, that it is going to shape up for Greg Rousseau to have maybe his best season yet on the Bills. Now the question is, what is that going to mean for sack totals? Is he a double-digit guy? I don't know what your opinion is on that, Joe. I think that for Rousseau, 10 is always going to be around that ceiling for him. I don't think he has that 13, 14, 15 sack level in him. But if he can get you from 8 to 11 on a yearly basis and do the things he does well routinely, I think you take it. I think that's a guy that is probably underappreciated by the fan base overall. Not saying that fans don't love him. I know he's a fan favorite, but overall, he is probably much closer to the top level of defensive ends in football than what people actually realize. And he's not in that top tier, but when you get to maybe top 10 to 15, he's definitely in that conversation when you get to that point.
I don't think he's the mountaintop of edge rushers. I think it's not impossible for him to get there. I think what we have to remember, like, again, I would have loved if Rousseau came and lit up the league, but Brandon Beane is a traits guy. He's going to find guys that have really raw but exciting tools and try to build it up. He's doing that with Keon Coleman right now. Greg Rousseau is the shining example of a guy. Josh Allen's the shining example of that, actually. But Greg Rousseau defensively is one of those examples. I think that we always had to be patient with Rousseau. And it's been frustrating because development is not linear. But Rousseau, through and through each year, just finds ways to get a little bit better. And the development hasn't been this shoot to the moon and he's Max Crosby type, but he has been productive. He has had moments. He has had flashes. For a guy that came into the league unbelievably raw, had only played the position for, I believe, 3 seasons prior in college, including missing a COVID year. He is not a player that came in as pro ready as anyone else. And I think that now we're seeing that just slow progression build up to a point where now that he has gotten paid below what you would have expected him to get, or at least any qualifying edge rusher that's like in contract extension territory, that I think his best football is ahead of him. I think we're going to see him continue to shine. And I think that the contingency is, if that positional group's investment, all the D-line, actually pays off, Rousseau is the one that eats the most. And if you have a Joey Bosa that's able to generate pressure on the opposite side of Rousseau, that's already going to be an automatic. If you're creating interior pass rush, that's already going to help him. There are these things set up to get the best out of Groot, and Groot himself potentially taking a step forward in addition to those pieces. I think there's so many variables that just can lead to him succeeding. And again, the Ryan Nielsen piece that I said earlier, that I just need to keep stressing how big of an addition that was to this D-line room. Ryan Nielsen is going to help this defensive line get more more creative, disguise things more, get more magical when it comes to the gaming. And I think that's also going to help Rousseau if you're talking about lining him up out wide as a wide rusher. And then all of a sudden there's a twist in the interior and Rousseau's got a clear lane to a quarterback. Like all these things are possible now, more likely now. And I'm really, really excited to see it. So that's just why I had him at number 1. And Mike, I think you're number 1 because you're such a great guest. Thank you for putting up with just hearing my voice and not seeing me. I apologize for everyone who was seeing this episode after the fact and wondering, when did you go to the void, Joe? I don't know. I really have no idea why this happened. I'm going to have to troubleshoot after we're live. But again, the people that listen on the audio platforms do not care because they just love hearing me yap without seeing my face. Totally understandable. But Mike, you are a great guest. I appreciate you joining me. The floor is yours. I want you to plug anything you got going on. Where can the good people find you? What are you working on? Take it away.
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter at Mike_Bunt, part of Trainwreck Sports. We have a lot of stuff going on with the Bills and Sabres going forward. You'll see me at training camp. I'm supposed to be at 7 practices. We'll have some limited access as well. So excited to throw some content your way. And like I said, big things happening at Trainwreck Sports, approaching 50,000 followers on Instagram and really all over the place. So we are trying to get yourself the most unique Bills and Sabres coverage possible on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So hope you guys follow along and enjoy the ride.
Yes, check out Mike's work. Check out everything going on over at Trainwreck Sports. Those guys are awesome. A few of our own that have been here in the network over there now, and it's great to see. And Mike's an awesome person to talk to, but also a great follow and someone that works his tail off to give you good content and puts up with the Sabres season, which that's more admirable really than anything else. But Mike, thank you again. For me, if you could see my face, I'd be smiling, but you can't. So you're just going to listen to my words when I say that my name is Joe DeRosa, and you can find me on underreviewc1.bsky.social. And this was a fun episode. And if you enjoyed it, feel free to drop a like on this video and check out all of the content that is coming out on Cover One right now. Again, our link to our premium subscription, our One Pass, is in the description of this upcoming video whenever I post it. Check it out. $60 a year is getting you all access, including our premium Discord, including some direct interactions with the content creators. And I have to plug this for our boy Chris Chows. Check out Chris's fantasy football guide. He just released it. It is available for purchase now. It's comprehensive as hell. He showed it to us, and the dude puts work into every single thing, and you are going to lean heavily into his words when it comes to your startup drafts in Dynasty, whether it's redraft. He's got something for you in there. It is an awesome fantasy football guide. I highly recommend checking it out and purchasing it from our network. Chris does amazing work for that fantasy football channel, so please check it out. But that's the end of this conversation. Again, great having you, Mike. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. We will see you soon. Training camp is just around the corner. Get excited. Football is almost back. But for tonight, we rest waiting for one more day to come. And in the meantime, I have nothing else to say. Take care, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your night. Go Bills.